and welcome to Pricing College with your hosts, Joanna Wells
and Ian Campbell. And as we say in the world of podcasts and buses, you wait for one bus and three come at once. So today we're doing our third in a series of articles or podcasts about Coca Cola.
All right, so we've been discussing Coke quite a bit, and we're saying that everybody knows Coke. We all know the brand, we all know the colour. We don't say Coca Cola, we say Coke. It got us thinking, about the branding behind Coke. It's powerful branding. It's obviously working. So today we just want to discuss the purpose of branding, how it's working so well for Coke, and potentially does their brand power give them more pricing power too?
Yeah, I think branding is one of those things that a lot of marketers and business people, don't really get. In many instances, people will say small companies cannot focus on branding. Branding is where you have mega bucks, you can invest hugely and hit all platforms, TV, radio, billboards, and internet, whatever else is new nowadays. With Coke, clearly, they are spending huge amounts of money globally and in any geography to get it across in your mind, to imprint in your mind what Coca-Cola is. One thing about their ads, they never talk about promotions in their ads on television. They never talk about pricing. They never compare their price to somebody else's. They're selling the lifestyle, they're selling the experience, they're selling the refreshment, the fun, all those good things. And of course, they've also got niches as well with their branding, such as the Christmas. There's that story, whether it's true or not, that Santa Claus wears red and white because of Coca-Cola ads. So you think really, when you think of branding, you think of Coke.
Yeah, so when the branding all comes out of what they call their trade spend, so that sort of like 50-50 split between advertising and then pricing, promotions, discounting, price positioning. So that, that 50% of trade spend on marketing and branding obviously has been doing a lot. As Aidan says, yeah, they keep the two very separate. One, I think the branding is there to really set the brand positioning in the market as the number one premium player in Coke. And I think it clearly, and that's been a repeated message with Coca Cola over many years, that they've got the expertise, that they're number one, and they're the go-to, top of mind choice for any consumer. And that's what they really try to push with their branding.
I think to some extent it's quite old-fashioned. I think in all segments, from toothpaste to household cleaners to washing up liquids, all those sort of things. Even 10, 15 years ago, there was the market leader, the heavily promoted brand, whether by Reckitt Benckiser or these sort of people, or who really would push with a lot of advertising spend. Many of these have been undermined to some extent by discount supermarket chains and your own brand competitors. Coca-Cola and the world of soft drinks is one of the stranger ones, whereby the traditional, I suppose the king of that market still is the king. And I suppose we want to discuss today, why would that be? Why would it be that, when I go into a cafe or stuff, I generally don't ask for a cola, you ask for a Coke, don't you? It's almost, I know that's also in other markets such as VHS was before it became extinct, and also a Hoover is still a very common word, even though probably people don't buy Hoovers when they're buying vacuum cleaners. So it can be very prominent in other areas, but Coke seems to be, the greatest example of it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, there's that repeated messaging over years that, they're number one premium, that they're the go-to sort of choice for a Coke drink. And that gets into the heads of consumers. But at the same time, over the past decade or so, has that brand message been diluted to some degree? Potentially it has. Yes, it's still strong. We all still know Coke, but we may go to other types of drinks when we go to the cafe. We might not just order a Coke. We might choose, a smoothie now then, when 10 years ago it would have been Coke, Pepsi, the whole bit. Now people's tastes have changed. And I think that's really changed their brand messaging too, because before, especially 80s, 90s, it was very sort of company centric. It was all about them. It was all about how great Coke were, and we had to fit in with the Coke lifestyle and ecosystem as consumers. But now I think, things have changed. The tables have turned somewhat, and now it's the consumers who have the front foot, and Coke is almost catching up with that. And yes, we would still go to Coke and think of it as a premium drink, but now there are other alternatives. So that's an interesting sort of dynamic to this brand positioning and brand power.
I personally think of the Coke branding as it protects them on the downside. I think, obviously there are alternative drinks. Let's give the example. If you go to somebody's house, for dinner, or even to a cafe or restaurant, and you ask for some food and you ask for a Coke or a cola, if you see them serving an own brand cola, which from an own brand logo and label, potentially you wouldn't taste the difference if you hadn't have seen that logo. Potentially, some people would argue differently, but we don't know if you would or not, depending on how much you like your Coke. But what I think would happen is if you saw them and you saw, oh, they're cutting corners there, they're saving a few cents here and there on that drink, which is in many regards, a nondescript drink. What would it be? What are they doing to the salad or to the meat? Where are they cutting corners elsewhere? It almost insinuates that they're just making those little savings here and there that potentially you'll see down the line. I don't think, obviously, they serve you a more premium soft drink, a batch made soft drink, etc. That question doesn't arise. But Coke is such a generic product, it protects them in the downside, where I think a lot of their competition is, certainly in supermarkets. We've seen over years many alternatives or attempts to combat Coke have failed. Virgin Coke in Britain, and also there's been more, own brands. Own brands have not really gained acceptance to the point where they're acceptable to serve them in public or certainly at a dinner party.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Coke still dominates within the Coke category. However, they are the go-to choice, whether it's because of prestige, status, habit, whatever's the key, consumer driver here. But with changes in diet, I do believe that the bigger issue is with alternatives, healthier alternatives. That's the bigger competition, and I don't think the brand messaging around that is clear, and as a result, Coke is acquiring a lot of healthier brands, waters, fruit drinks, the whole lot. And the brand positioning around that is less clear than the brand positioning around Coca Cola. And as a consumer, you don't think of the alternatives that they've just acquired, the healthier alternatives. You still think of Coke, which demonstrates indicates that their brand positioning is still confused across their portfolio.
Yeah, I think we often think of branding as promoting premier or premium sort of concepts. I think in this instance now, as time moves on in 2020, I almost think that the branding is to keep its stability in that mid-market share, to protect it on the downside, and to some extent leave the top end of the market open to batch drinks and very niche sort of products and services where people are prepared to pay more for to look cool, really, or to look like they're on the cutting edge of stuff with people, which Coke will never make you look at the cutting edge or make you look unusual. So it's really a protection from, to some extent, from society shooting you down, really, if you are seen to be cutting corners and being cheap with your guests. So it's a strange model. Would it apply to any new company coming up? Probably not. But really, they have that. That legacy business is a historical company, such a strong brand, and then the money is there to protect it and keep it in that mass market area.
Yeah, I think, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the brand positioning around Coke was really strong. People used to drink Coke much more than they do today. And, it was competing with like one or two alternatives on the basis of, superiority, expertise, and brand positioning, and it did a really good job. However, the message now is still pretty much the same as it was then, and as a result, but now the market is saturated with new entrants. It's more fragmented. People want different things, and it's much more consumer led. So I think, Aidan, you said about, the prestige value of Coke in a party. I think, again, even that is not as much as it would have been. So you probably, if you had a new entrant in Coca Cola and it had a new spin on it, which was healthy, it was kid friendly, it was good or kinder on the teeth, and for the kids' teeth, they weren't going to ruin the enamel, etc., etc. Mums would be okay with that. They'd be like, oh, what is that new brand? And they wouldn't be thinking, oh, you didn't give my kid the Coke drink, or I think they'd be like, actually, it's better for the kid. Thanks for introducing this new brand to me. So I actually think even in terms of status, that's changed too.
Yeah, I think it is, and kids' birthday parties can be a minefield. Obviously, if you think dinner party guests can be problems, parents of kids at a birthday party can be even more picky than at a five-star restaurant.
Yeah, even so that if you actually have Coke at a party, then some people would be like, oh, she's got Coke at a party, at kids' parties. That's not very health conscious. So
it is. I think it highlights how branding and any product, the value of any product, as we always say, is determined very much by the time, the place, the niche, all the details. You really have to dig into it. The value drivers of that product, there can be value in one instance, could be a negative in the other. I personally think I've covered Coke as much as I want to cover it this week, so I'm done.
Yeah, me too. All right, thanks for listening. All right.
Bye.